Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. For those of you that are coming back, this is an update on my Mandalorian Mercs costume build. So today we're going to be focusing on the cod piece. Now you want to make sure you apply the same amount of detail to this piece of armor that you have to the rest of your costume, or it's just not going to look right. If you find today's video to be informative and perhaps even inspiring to make your own Mandalorian Mercs costume, go ahead and click on the playlists I have in the description, as well as the video links that appear throughout this build. So without making you wait any longer, let's go ahead and get started. I've already started cutting this plastic piece. I want to go ahead and get my straight edges out of the way. So I'm using a ruler here and a very sharp blade. I like to resharpen these blades. They're kind of expensive, so I just go back after I've used them a couple of projects, or maybe after every project I'll go ahead and sharpen it again. But you want to use even pressure here. Make sure you keep your fingers out of the way. Try to make it a 90-degree angle, or as close as you can get it, and multiple passes. As soon as you hear that snap there, that's when you know you've made it all the way through. Now, band saws, other things might work, small saws, but I prefer the multiple passes with the razor blade. And again, even if you don't get an exact 90-degree cut, it's close enough. This is a 5mm piece of plastic. We're going to go ahead and try a new experiment here on this curved cut. I took my awl and scored a line here, and I was trying to take as much time as possible to make sure I got an accurate score right on top of the area that I marked for my pattern. Unfortunately, I did go off the rails almost immediately. You can see my razor blade did not follow the score line. Once I did notice that, I went ahead and backtracked and continued cutting. And again, this is a very sharp blade, so you want to make sure that your fingers are out of the way and that you're applying a controllable pressure. Multiple passes will allow you to again to start hearing that snapping noise, and that's when you know that you've cut all the way through. It did take a little bit to get through that last piece, and we can sand and even up some of those crooked edges, but this is the SKU number, and you can see this is the footage from my first short. Just wanted to give you guys an update on what I was doing and what I was working on. And you can see here it's a 2x4 white panel, and it cost me about $17, but you can see how the pieces line up. And went ahead and traced my area for gluing. I marked the pinholes off the pattern, but then I traced that piece that we just cut out, and I'm going to go ahead and add this PVC cement. This was a little less than $9.50 for the cement, but since we were using an expanded PVC foam, as far as the board, I wanted to make sure that I used the appropriate adhesive for that. So we'll go ahead and get both sides so that we can ensure there is a good fit. I do apologize about the exterior noise. Balcony where I work is right next to a road that leads folks to a local hiking trail that's quite popular this time of year. But I want to try my best to line these edges up so we can fix this in place. Once we get that where we want it, we'll add a little bit of pressure here, and then what you can see from my next video with a little bit of voiceover, we're going to try to get some even pressure distributed across this entire piece. And we want to get these edges as close to perfect as we can, but you know, it's woodworking psychology. I heard this the other day. It's perfection in time and visibility.
Back here with the PVC plastic on the balcony,
You can see here where we
these clamps
applied that pressure.
We used some PVC glue. Figured since that's the glue that's designed for this kind of plastic, probably the best. And you can see here I fixed those two pieces together on this cod piece. I'm going to get out the heat gun. We can start shaping this and move on to the next video.
And we want to use safety gloves. We're going to apply this heat here. We want to make sure that we do not get too close. I'm going to do this in real time so you can see exactly how long it takes to heat this up. So I am heating the inside. Notice how far I am away from the plastic. This is on the highest setting. And you want to move it around. If you let it stay in one spot a little too long, it will kind of marshmallow up on you. It'll start to turn a yellowish, light brown, and get darker. But again, we want to make sure that we apply heat thoroughly, because we're going to try to bend this piece to follow the curve of my waist. You also want to make sure that if you have a respirator, chemical respirator, that you use that. This puts off some noticeable fumes, but you want to be in a well-ventilated area. I also have a fan behind me blowing the fumes out away from the balcony. So once we've shaped that, you can see there's a slight curve to it. We do not need to get the full bend in one pass. We can do this in multiple heating sessions, if you'd like to call it that. But we'll go ahead and get the initial bend, and we'll finalize the details once we have both sides in place. And you only have to hold this for about 30 to 60, maybe 60 seconds for it to cool off. And it already is starting to take shape. We'll have the bottom piece here. You can see I've bent both sides, and then I have the bottom piece tucked under, and this is the piece that goes between the legs. I'll also attach a strap to this to give it the full movie version effect. You can see here I've also marked an area where we're going to add some buttons. And even here on the bottom where we have some imperfections, we can smooth those out with the heat gun in later passes. But we are going to add some extra details to this piece. And I'm not sure if these were switches or buttons, but the pattern was traced onto an extra piece of this PVC board. And you can use razor blades, saws, anything to get that cut and angle. I used a razor blade myself. And then to get some of these rough edges cleared away, you can use sandpaper, sanding sticks, or even a Dremel or rotary tool similar to this one. Personally, I prefer the sanding sticks. And once we have most of the excess knocked off, we can glue that in place with our PVC glue and pressure. So I've gone through and sealed up all of the edges with RONDO. I like using RONDO. I wasn't sure how it would react to this particular plastic, but it seems to be working very well. And then I'll go in and sand off some of these edges, feather them in, and get rid of some of the uneven areas. And we'll start moving forward. I'm also going to bend the back piece because I need to know where the hardware lines up. So we'll have to find out exactly where we have to put those fasteners so that we can keep this attached to our waistband. I'll probably add some snaps as well to my flight suit to keep it in place. Before we move on to affixing that hardware, we're going to add one final detail. So I'll get the heat gun, you can see it bubbling up there, and the tip of a hammer. And this is just going to be the initial phase. We're going to put some pressure just to give us a little bit of a circle on where we're going to locate this particular blaster mark. And this ball of foil that I'm going to use, you can see that here, we're going to heat this again and use pressure in that foil to give us those imperfections to make it look like it has been hit by a blaster and did some damage to the metal. So now that we have that out of the way, we can drill our holes, and then that's the front piece. You can also see how it's cooled down, that blaster mark. But we also want to drill the back piece, and you can see here once that comes into focus, I took out some of the pieces. I routed out a little bit with a Forstner bit just to give me a little surface area for my Chicago screws to attach. So I'm going to use my favorite method again, super glue and baking soda. So I apply the super glue exactly where I want it to go. Then I'll coat the pieces in baking soda initially, and hold that in place once we get it lined up. And again, pressure, and you can use multiple passes. We can use super glue and baking soda as many times as we need to get a bond, and it is completely sandable once it's dried and cured. So one of my favorite techniques for attaching screws, any type of armor to my costume, as well as what I did with the visor on the helmet. So we'll do one more pass here and add some pressure just to keep that in place. Once that's dried, I've taped off the screws themselves, and I'm going to apply some primer. I also sanded the edges down, rounded them off. That rounded edge makes it look a little more like a real armor. You can see here with the primer, it's in a cardboard box. I don't have a spray booth, but I have that fan blowing behind me, trying to get these fumes off of the balcony, and the cardboard box is picking up any of the overspray. And you can see you want to dust this. You don't want it to be a full pass with primer. You just want to give us a little bit of a dust coat first, let that dry for a few minutes, and then go back with multiple passes. I think I took maybe 3 total to get this entire piece covered. Make sure you do the front and the back. You can see here it's starting to shape up. I've covered the RONDO and the buttons. You can see the blaster, as well as the front piece itself is completely sealed up. So I wanted to give this a metallic, reflective metallic finish, but I had to use a darker silver than I would like. But we're going to start masking that. So I used a 4-0 steel wool to just scuff the surface, and I'm going to use these stencils that I downloaded to get as close to a realistic battle damage as I can, or at least as close to screen accurate. So I've penciled these out. On lighter colors, you might be able to use the carbon paper underneath to get an accurate area. You don't really need it to be exactly like the screen accurate pieces, but I try my best to get it as close to that as possible. And I prefer using toothpaste. It's very cheap. It's Dollar Tree toothpaste, and I thin that out with a little bit of water. I use a fine brush to go after a lot of the details. Once I've covered the edges of the chipped paint, then I'll go in and add multiple passes with a thicker brush or a bigger brush. And this is all you need to get started as the tip of the brush comes into focus. And we're just going to do our best to replicate that damage on the stencil. You can see here on the top edge, we got as much as we can. And we'll use some of those other imperfections as well to help us with the paint chipping and battle damage. So we don't need perfection. Remember, striving for it is one thing, but also it's fun to sometimes have some creative influence on this. Just let the paintbrush take you wherever it might need to go. And you don't want this to dry. As soon as you get this completely covered, you have all of your initial paint chips in place. We want to get this out to our spray booth or box and get it covered as fast as possible. So this is the first color that we're going to use in our layering, and you can see how the toothpaste did not allow the paint to adhere to the metallic level, or the metallic layer. So we'll do the front and the back, and you can see right there in the background I have a bucket with a brush and some soapy water, and that's what I'll use to just scrub away the toothpaste. And once we've removed all that, you can see how it reveals the metallic layer underneath. And we don't need it to be completely perfect. Like I said, folks, it's just get creative, make it look natural as much as you can. You can see how I've also added some additional toothpaste to the yellow layer.
In place, you can see that it's been chipped
you
down.
probably recognize this short video.
And we'll be done. And
I appreciate the comments as well in my shorts. But again, I just wanted to keep you guys posted on what I was working on. So now that we have the layers in place, we're going to try to weather them and make them look used. I think that's one of the best features about the Star Wars universe, is that everything looks worn and used. It's not shiny and brand new. So we're going to start with this black. It's an oil-based paint. And what I like to do is mix that naphtha in, and it'll thin it out just a little bit. I forgot my screwdriver. That's to pop the top on there. There's a safety top. Also, this is flammable. It is a solvent, so you want to make sure that you have a ventilated area, or you're using some type of respirator. And we'll add that naphtha there and just mix the black oil paint around. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to add depth to our paint layers, because as it is, I guess it's kind of cartoonish. It doesn't really look like it's been through damage. It's not a real Star Wars universe piece. But when you add this darker color to it, it will start to bring out some of the imperfections. You can see here I also scuffed the outer layer with a little bit of fine sandpaper, just to give us some additional weathering features. So I'll take my chip brush, just do the outside layer, or that thin area on the outside, and make multiple passes. I rotate the brush, spin it around. You can use as many passes as you need. And you can change the values. I guess that's what it would be called, as far as when it's a little darker. You can notice here this particular area has a much darker black mixed in. And if you feel like you put too much on, don't worry, you can always get a little bit of naphtha on a paper towel to pull it off. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take a dry paper towel first, but you can see the difference in the values just on this one side of the rear armor for the lower back. If you use a smooth or a flat, non-textured paper towel, you might get a better result, but just a generic cheap paper towel will get the job done as well, as long as you're not transferring that pattern over. But I believe here we have enough movement and variety that we can actually hide some of those imperfections. So you want to pull off as much as you can, and remember, the secret is to do this multiple passes. Do this as often as you would like. Now I'm going to add some more here and try to get most of this piece covered in some type of gray or black, and then I'll pull that off. And this is to give it that worn look, that whether it's blaster marks, it's scorching, It's grease, grime, maybe it's soot from battle damage in a war conflict. Who knows what it is? Scraping, moving around. And that's what we're looking for. So I've finished with the black, and you can see there are a few spots where it's still a little beige coming through. But I'm going to add some brown now. And this one's thinned out a little bit better. And I probably won't use as many. Here you'll see, instead of covering all of it with the gray and the black like I did earlier, I'm just going to space the brown out a little more. But I'm going to use the same technique. Using that chip brush, circular patterns, changing the angle, and again, the values. How much are we putting on? Are we using that really thinned part, or are we using a little more of the oil paint? And once we have enough of our brown on, we'll do the same thing. Take that paper towel and start to remove some of the excess. You can see how that scuff mark came through real nice. And that'll come back into view here. But yeah, this could be enough right here. We want to make sure we do both sides. And then we want to also compare this to the other armor. We're going to do a final pass when we do a suit up. But we want to try to get this as close as we can to our other pieces. So I finished detailing and griming up the piece. I wanted to go ahead and add some more detail to this blaster, so I took some rub and buff and actually applied that to the interior of that blaster mark, and that gave me a little different color of silver. And then I'm going to take the same chip brush that I flattened out. I'm going to add a little bit of the black that we used for the weathering. But notice I'm trying to add that scorched kind of burn mark around the blaster area. And I'm not going to wipe this away. I'm going to do multiple passes with this. I believe I wound up doing 6 total. But I just want the bristles to touch the outside edge. So again, that's wrapping up this piece. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it. I am progressing along. If you were able to see some of the back footage, you probably saw me working on the knee pads. I'm also working on the back plate if you're watching my shorts. So I'll have some of those ready to go soon. Again, please like and subscribe if you want to see this build, and thanks for watching.